You're listening to the tales of Captain Madrow and the Amori Delamar. The Amori Delamar had dropped her anchor just outside of Coral Bay. Due west was the Tropic of Capricorn, having set sail from Tolemaro past Port Louis, past the turn to Singapore, and unto the south of the Cocoa Islands to Coral Bay. We would render needed repairs to the Amori Delamar before sojourning northeast from Coral Bay to Jakarta. A manifest list contained mainly coffee, but the islands of Sumatra were not our only point of interest. As Dr. Livingston, our botanist on the Amori Delamar, was keen on obtaining some examples of the myriad species of flora and vegetation to return to Hong Kong by month's end. But for now, the crew was at liberty. A team of specialists were intent on using the leisure provided to explore the area near Coral Bay, the western side of Australia. There were reports of strange discoveries near the Great Sandy Desert just past Carmarthen between Lake Disappointment and Alice Springs. The rumors of an isolated forest had drawn all of our attentions for the moment. Dr. Livingston was a sturdy Dutchman. He had studied botany in Melbourne. His family was from Perth and with some handy connections to the traders and tycoons in Hong Kong. It was his hope to find suitable plant life that could be perhaps grown in arid and inhospitable soil. The area past Coral Bay was resplendent with inhospitable territory, no doubt. Myself, Captain Madrow, and my first mate for the journey was Abdul from Punjab stock. He was a smarmy, dashing lad who loved the prospect of adventure on land or sea. We decided to join Dr. Livingston along his way toward Lake Disappointment. I must admit I was a bit intrigued by his talk of the petrified forest near Lake Alice. The land was harsh, of course, but the mild season was upon Western Australia, so I should certainly expect at the least some vigorous exercise. Dr. Livingston was also to bring a few of his assistants, in total a party of 12, prepared for what should be a short journey, perhaps a week or so, and by then the repairs should be done on the Amori Delamar, and we would gather our crew and become once again responsible seamen. But for a fortnight or so, we would be landlubbers in not exactly pristine territory indeed. I had never seen a petrified forest. I had heard much about it. Dr. Livingston assured us he knew exactly where it would be. I turned to Abdul to get his reaction, and he certainly indicated he was eager to see what our petrified forest would be. So I was intrigued, and as we gathered our things and prepared for the eve, and we would start first thing in the morning to prepare for our journey, led by Dr. Livingston, and we shall see what fate shall bring. After a hearty breakfast at the only respectable establishment in Onslow, the sleepy Portico, the eggs were quite satisfying, and the bagels and lox were perhaps the only available for many miles. A spot of tea, and a party of assembled interns, and Dr. Livingston. Abdul and I gathered our things. A local was commissioned as a sort of guide, apparently having been hand-picked by Dr. Livingston. The two spoke softly to each other. Dr. Livingston had huddled with the guide. They were talking over, matter-of-factly, apparently, some minute details. It appears we will be going primarily on horseback with some motorized transport near Sturt Creek. From there, it was a trek on foot with a few pack animals to the general area of where Dr. Livingston described as the most unusual spot on Earth. Considering this spot is in Australia, I must say, that loomed as a rather confident boast, I should say. Abdul was resplendent in his explorer's garb. His ever-present headdress caused the bronze outline of his youthful face to gleam in the early morning sun. As seamen, Abdul and I were a bit hard-pressed to arrange suitable gear. The creatures of the outback were trouble enough. It was uncertain what treachery would prevail in this arid land. Nonetheless, as Dr. Livingston had suggested, a pair of high leather boots, while a bit smothering, would be well worth the hefty price required by the merchants of Onslow. And so we began, looking very much like qualified landlubbers, Abdul and I, and his litany of interns. As we began the first day of our journey to what Dr. Livingston described as a place we should certainly not forget. Dr. Livingston was in his early 50s. According to his own account, he was had been a rather abrupt and cocksure son of a bitch in the throes of his sordid youth. His family, comfortable bureaucrats in Perth. He was privileged to a very soft and leisurely lifestyle of the well-educated white class of Western Australia. A comfortable middle-class existence, an existence in which he unabashedly threw his privilege in anyone's face, or a mug of stout if handy as well. His relaxed conversations after a drink or two would invariably provide details of debauchery, with debauchery winning every moral arm wrestle.